One major reason for this kind of thing is this, that within this developments is this, that within the standardized format of dissent, many sectors of the population who now constitute the new victims of our world have no play. That is because I like to believe gradually over the last 30 years, we have tried to specify and contain dissent, whether in universities or whether in official circles or in academic thought. We have tried to contain dissent by defining what is good dissent and what is bad dissent. Dissent is classified, as many in Indians now began to do, faced with the Maoist challenge. Dissent that is rational, that is sane, that is mature, adult, constructive. Dissent which meets the criteria set by the Enlightenment values, which are in tune with contemporary scientific rationality, the idea of empirical reality, the idea of learning from history, and so on and so forth. And in this kind of formulation, a sizable section of the world now finds no place whatsoever. And there has therefore arisen, without our trying, or for that matter, they are trying also. I do not think most of these people who are involved in this kind of dissent, other kind of dissent, even would call themselves dissenters, do not have they do not use the categories of dissent or radicalism or left and so on and so forth. They have other kind of concerns, and we have to capture that. Given this development, what we are facing today are forms of dissent which positively, without knowingly or unknowingly, flout our canons of what is proper dissent. And yet, if you look closely, if you have the heart to empathize, and if you have the mind to listen, the will to listen, you will find certain running themes which make sense to you. Them. It makes sense to them. They make sense to them, will make sense to you also. Because if you look closely, not only there is new dissent, there are new forms of dominance now also in the world. Dominance is now not exercised so much by military power or economic strength. They come in, I'm not denying their importance. But the crucial factors which establish dominance, in fact hegemony, if I may say so, derive from categories, the ideas. And even in the case where it is exercised directly through military power and economic prowess, invariably the justification for dominance come from a set of values which previously was thought to be emancipatory or contributing to human liberation. Science, rationality, progress, realism, history, these are the crucial words. And if you would allow me to say, at least for some sections of our world, these have become some of the dirtiest words in the lexicon. When tribals are displaced from their older habitats and steel mines or aluminium mines are established or strip mining takes place, the justification is always in terms of progress. Justification is always in terms of development. Whatever may be the ultimate empirical truth, you cannot convince those who have been victims of these decisions that somehow the solution to their problem is even more progress, even more development, more intelligent development. Maybe they are. But to them, it makes no sense. To them, it looks like a scam. We have seen this not only the case in very recent times, this has been coming for a long while. I remember reading Robert Lifton's book, Nazi Doctors. And there is, in between the lines of the book, if you read, there's almost a tinge of surprise in him that when he began to interview these Nazi doctors who had participated during World War II in the concentration camps and experimented on live human beings in torture and even in deciding who will live and who will die. He noted with some element of surprise that they all justified their acts not by Nazi ideology, but by quoting textbooks of public health, hygiene, eugenics, 19th century biology, and so on and so forth. Justification was in terms of medical science. Rightly or wrongly, that's different. This good science or bad, I'm not going into that. But the idea of science was repeatedly deployed by them to justify what they had done. It may be bad science, they might be doing it wrongly, and I'm not concerned with that. I am saying they deployed the idea of science repeatedly. And that is the case even today. That tradition has not died. In fact, it has strengthened over the decades. That has become the major way of justifying. Now, establishment, those which were symbols of dissent at one time, has become the badges of establishment today. The same concept. That which was supposed to be emancipatory has become a form of legitimizing pauperization, displacement, and increasing homelessness. Why am I saying that this has a common trend? I think there are two reasons for it. Maybe I should after this, I might end the presentation with this. First, even though we think that many of these protests are confined to small geographical regions and localized, that is, they are nothing cross-cultural about them. They are specific to some countries in some situations. Somehow or other, they have begun to make sense to each other. And if you look at it, there are very interesting examples of this. The most feared intervention for the Burmese military junta which rules Burma today, Myanmar, are not the American sanctions or the European Union's censor. It is the fear that Dalai Lama has supported movement against the military junta. That was the reason that the Burmese monks rose in revolt. Many of them died, as you know. And this rebellion makes perfect sense outside Burma too. It is not, by the way, Dalai Lama doesn't speak Burmese. And the Burmese monks are not so well versed in English to get what Dalai Lama is saying to them. But there is this communication. It crosses the barriers of international borders. It makes sense to them. And I like to believe that there is something more than a shared language which allows these kind of thoughts to cross the barriers of cultures and barriers of national borders. When the Zapatistas in Mexico say that to us Dissent means, and cosmopolitanism means, that we should be able to host not the others by integrating them within us, but we should be able to host the otherness of the others. That's a part of a unwritten universal manifesto of the tolerance of radical diversity. That where you host not others on grounds that the others will be integrated in the mainstream, that you make a place for them on the basis of equality and fraternity and liberty within your system, but that you make a place for them on the acceptance of their otherness and you learn to live with it. That's a different kind of cosmopolitanism. And that message, I think, also makes sense to many other groups in many other parts of the world, whether they speak the language of the Zapatistas or not. It certainly makes sense to many of the tribal group activists today. Secondly, to give another example, many of these groups speak a language which is almost aggressively ahistorical. They talk the language of myths, legends, epics, shared public memories handed over generations, grandparents' tales. And yet, though we might think that these are exceedingly localized, true only of a particular community or a culture or a tribe, nevertheless, somehow they cross the barriers of cultures. I think when you tell stories of your suffering and oppression and violence, it travels in some way. It crosses theoretical borderlines. It crosses ideologies. And many of these groups, when they try to articulate the suffering of their own suffering, they, in one sense, are looking for resonance, not for your theory, not for your theories of oppression, or for your theories of revolution and emancipation. They are looking for that resonance. They are willing to talk for themselves. They are not waiting for you to articulate your suffering in their words. I think it is Michel Foucault who once said that nothing is more obscene than talking on behalf of somebody else. No, we don't have to talk on behalf of them. We have to make space for them to articulate what they have to say. And I think somehow our vision of democracy has failed to do that. And this is not only true of the southern world, this is true of the first world too. I see this in the United States, where you will find that none of the two major parties in the manifesto, I'm not talking of campaign, forget the campaign, not even in the manifesto mention the word poverty. Though at the time the manifestos were written the last time, America had a poverty rate of between 11 to 13%. In the world's capital of world capitalism, New York, 50,000 persons sleep even in winter in culverts, under bridges, in abandoned large pipes meant for the sewage, and so on and so forth. Right there. To them, to explain the beauties and grandeur of American democracy is a bit of a joke. So, and to me it seems that in somehow it is a little bit more obscene than poverty, absolute poverty or destitution, in a society there which has so many destitutes that it cannot take care of them. It has been estimated that American poverty can be removed if only a small part of America's nuclear problem is abandoned. The nuclear project is jettisoned. Like, for example, if you take away the submarine-based nuclear weaponry and the cost of that, that is enough to remove the poverty. That destitution, I would say, not poverty. Poverty is too big, destitution. But it will not be done. And to me it seems that brutalizes a society, because somehow the victims sense that society can do it but will not do it. I think today Indians tribals have become so restive because they know the society can do it. It is now booming, but it will not do it. That is brutalizing. I have come to the end of my talk. I have probably only one point, perhaps I should make it. I've been studying genocide for the last 10 years. And I have noticed that the most worst kind of venom comes out in situations where the two communities are not strangers but very close to each other. So they acquires something in the nature of an exorcism. We were talking about this with Paul this afternoon only. And I once accidentally found out that there are traditional village painters in Bengal, in India, eastern India. Bengal as well as Bangladesh, both. And these painters also sometimes draw. Some traditional, they generally depict traditional gods and goddesses, their stories and so on and so forth, but also sometimes paint on contemporary themes, very, very stylized forms, which is very well known now. So a friend of mine accidentally came across, and so I accidentally came to know, of a series done by some of them on 9/11. So I was curious and tried to find out what was unique about it. And I discovered that in their telling of the story, Osama bin Laden and George Bush are brothers who had fallen apart. Now, this might look a travesty of historical truth. This might look almost comical deviation from reality. But it might also tell us that something of a vision of the world, something of a kind of sensitivity where some of the inner truths, unspoken truths of our time are uttered in an indirect fashion, may not be to our satisfaction, but perhaps to those who are using the media. Do we have the capacity to listen? Do we have the will to listen and the heart to empathize? Thank you for your patience.